My wife's old flame was back. She gave me a heads up, and I offered to pick him up from the airport. The old flame politely said, "That's too much trouble," but in the end the three of us had dinner together. When he rushed to pay the bill at the end, my wife secretly settled it. Later, a friend asked me, "Your wife's old flame is back. Don't you care?" Honestly, I really don't. Chapter 1. When I got the call from my wife, Victoria Donovan, I was watering my new favorite, a succulent I had just picked up from the flower market downstairs. "Honey, I need to tell you something." Victoria's voice was calm, with that familiar tone of professional efficiency softened by a hint of tenderness. I said, carefully controlling the stream of water. "Go on, I'm listening. Is it a business trip or a work dinner tonight?" There was a 2-second pause on the other end, then she said, "Neither. It's Ethan Blackwood. He's back, Ethan Blackwood." The name was like a glass marble, long forgotten in a corner, that someone had just accidentally kicked, sending it rolling to my feet. I couldn't help but pause. He was my wife, Victoria's old flame, the one that got away, and a legendary figure in our social circle. He'd been a golden boy since our school days, top grades, top looks, top family background, the whole package. He went abroad for his studies and became even more successful, a true Wall Street elite. Everyone thought he and Victoria were a match made in heaven. But then, not long after he left the country, Victoria married me, a man who, in everyone's eyes, was utterly ordinary, even suspected of being a freeloader. "Oh, he's back," I said, my reaction as flat as if we were discussing what to have for dinner. I even had the presence of mind to poke the fleshy leaf of the succulent and continue, "When does he arrive?" "I'll book a restaurant for a welcome dinner." Victoria seemed to choke on her words, probably not expecting this reaction from me. In the script she'd imagined, I might have gone silent, asked a barrage of questions, or shown even the slightest hint of tension and unease. Too bad for her, she married me. Tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock flight. A hint of an imperceptible smile crept into Victoria's voice. "No need for a restaurant. I just wanted to let you know. After all, he's him and you're you." That last sentence was meant to be reassuring. I smiled, putting down the watering can and leaning against the balcony railing. The afternoon sun was warm, and the laughter of children playing downstairs drifted up. "That won't do," I said with mock seriousness. "He's come all this way. We have to show him the warmth of his hometown. How about this? I'll go with you to the airport tomorrow. It'll show that our family has good manners. You'll go?" This time Victoria was genuinely surprised. "Of course," I said, full of righteous confidence. "I'm your husband. Your former friend is back." "Don't I, the reigning monarch, need to go and assert my sovereignty?" "Just kidding." I paused, my tone softening. "I want your friends who still harbor unrealistic fantasies to see that you're happy now. And your husband is very supportive. We're a couple. We're a team." The other end of the line was silent for a long time, so long I thought the connection had dropped. Just as I was about to say hello, I heard Victoria's voice, very soft, with a slight nasal tone. "Sincere, you're so good to me." "Of course I am," I accepted brazenly. "Why else would you have given up the dazzling Ethan Blackwood for a dull stone like me?" "Because a stone is warm," she said, "and you can hold it in your hand for a lifetime." Then she quickly hung up. I held the phone, shaking my head with a wry smile. That woman, still so easily flustered. Honestly, I couldn't care less about Ethan Blackwood's return. A man's greatest confidence doesn't come from his wealth or status, but from the unwavering certainty that the woman he loves has eyes only for him, and Victoria had given me that certainty in spades. Chapter 2. The next afternoon, I drove our family's most low-key SUV, with Victoria beside me, and arrived at the international arrivals gate right on time. Victoria was dressed in a chic beige pantsuit, her hair tied back to reveal her long, elegant neck. She radiated the aura of a corporate elite who was not to be trifled with. But the hand she had looped through my arm was gripping just a little too tightly. "Nervous?" I asked, turning my head to whisper. She didn't look at me, her gaze fixed on the stream of people at the exit. But her words were honest, a little. Not because of him, but because of this whole situation. "It feels like we're acting in some prime-time soap opera." I chuckled. "Don't worry, with me here, I guarantee it'll turn into a sitcom." She shot me a look, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help but turn up. Just then, a small commotion rippled through the crowd at the exit, and a tall man in a well-tailored trench coat emerged, pushing a luggage cart. Even through the crowd, I recognized him instantly. Ethan Blackwood. He looked more mature than in the photos and more imposing. He wore a perfectly calibrated smile, and his eyes scanned the crowd, quickly locking onto Victoria. In that moment, the light in his eyes was a complex mixture of surprise, nostalgia, and a possessive certainty. He pushed the cart and walked straight toward us. The eyes of the surrounding onlookers, unaware of the backstory, began to dart back and forth between the three of us. The air was thick with a scent of gossip. "Victoria, long time no see." Ethan's voice was magnetic. He opened his arms as if to give Victoria a hug. But Victoria only leaned closer to me, her hand still linked with mine. She simply nodded and smiled at him. "Long time no see, Ethan. Welcome back." Ethan's hug met empty air. The smile on his face froze for a second, but he recovered quickly. His gaze fell on me, assessing and probing. "And this is my husband, Sincere Clark." Victoria's introduction was concise and clear. Playing my part perfectly, I extended a hand, my face beaming with a warm smile. "Mr. Blackwood, a pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you. Victoria often mentions you, says you were the most respectable senior from her school days." I deliberately put extra emphasis on respectable. A corner of Ethan's mouth twitched. He probably expected me to say favorite or unforgettable. He shook my hand, his grip firm. "You're too kind, Mr. Clark." I, on the other hand, never expected Victoria to get married so quickly. His words, though seemingly polite, were laced with insinuation and provocation. He was implying that Victoria's choice was hasty, perhaps even a mistake. Victoria's brow furrowed slightly, and she was about to speak, but I beat her to it, saying in a tone of sudden realization, "Ah, well, you can blame me for that." I slapped my forehead with a look of mock chagrin. Back then, I pursued Victoria relentlessly, pestering her until she had no choice but to agree to marry me. "You see, Mr. Blackwood, I don't have any grand talents, but I can cook a few decent home-style dishes." I captured her stomach. And as the saying goes, the way to a woman's heart is through her stomach. My self-deprecating, half-joking speech completely dissipated the ambiguous, regret-tinged atmosphere that Ethan had tried to create. Victoria couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing, playfully punching my arm. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Ethan's expression soured. It was like he had thrown a punch at a cotton ball. He had come prepared with a full arsenal of clever lines and a powerful presence, only to have it all derailed by my stay-at-home husband persona. He never imagined that not only would I show no jealousy or insecurity, but I would actively join in with jokes and banter. This was not in his script. "Let's get to the car. It's windy out here," I said enthusiastically, taking his luggage cart. "Mr. Blackwood, I've booked a place for tonight to welcome you back. Don't you dare stand on ceremony with me. Just think of it as our Victoria treating an old schoolmate on my behalf." I grinned with utter sincerity, as if he were just any old friend of Victoria's. Ethan watched the natural interaction between Victoria and me, watched me casually take her handbag, then looked down at his own cold luggage cart. A shadow crossed his eyes. Finally, he managed a polite smile. "Well then, I'd hate to trouble you, Mr. Clark." No trouble at all." I waved my hand, pushing the cart ahead. My voice was loud and clear. "We're all family here behind me." Victoria quickened her pace to catch up, whispering in my ear in a voice only we could hear, "You're a real character." I gave her a wink. This was just the beginning. The real show was yet to come. Chapter 3. The restaurant I booked was a private kitchen with excellent privacy. The ambiance was serene, the food exquisite, and the only drawback was the price. After we were seated, Ethan naturally sat next to Victoria and began chatting about his years abroad, from the high-stakes world of Wall Street to a skiing trip in Switzerland. He was a skilled conversationalist, always managing to casually showcase his success and taste while artfully weaving Victoria into the conversation, reminiscing about their shared past. "Remember? We used to love that library cafe behind the school. We'd spend whole afternoons there. That fountain pen you gave me, I've kept it with me all this time." With practiced ease, he drew an invisible wall between us. Inside the wall were his and Victoria's youthful memories. Outside was me, the out-of-place outsider. Victoria was a bit uncomfortable and tried several times to steer the conversation toward me, but Ethan cleverly brought it back to themselves each time. And me, I didn't interrupt once. I just sat there quietly, listening with a smile, while serving Victoria food. I shelled the shrimp she liked, dipped them in sauce, and placed them in her bowl. I ladled a bowl of the soup she enjoyed, blew on it to cool it down, and passed it to her. My actions were completely natural, as if I had done them 1,000 times before. Gradually, Ethan's eloquent storytelling began to slow. His gaze started to drift involuntarily to my movements as I cared for Victoria. The look of superiority in his eyes slowly transformed into an unreadable scrutiny. He probably couldn't fathom how a proud woman like Victoria could so contentedly accept such meticulous care from a man. Finally, when a Buddha jumps over the wall soup was served, Ethan found what he thought was an opportunity to regain the upper hand. He pointed to the elaborate tureen and said to Victoria, "I remember, you used to have a sensitive stomach. You should probably eat less of something this rich." Then he looked at me, his tone carrying the weight of a superior offering advice. "Mr. Clark, Victoria needs to be careful with her diet. You can't be too careless about what she eats." Here we go. The man's battlefield had arrived. Just as Victoria was about to explain, I pressed her hand and gave Ethan a look that said, "Point taken. Mr. Blackwood is absolutely right. I haven't been doing a good enough job in that department. I'll be more careful in the future." I said this, but my hands didn't stop moving. I took a spoon and expertly scooped out several items from the soup: sea cucumber, fish maw, and a pigeon egg, placing them in Victoria's bowl. I then pushed the rest of the soup to the center of the table. Our Victoria does indeed have a delicate stomach. The abalone and pork tendon in this dish are hard for her to digest, but the sea cucumber and fish maw are nourishing and gentle. The pigeon egg here is slow cooked in chicken broth until it melts in your mouth, perfect for her. So, she gets the best parts, and I'll take care of the rich parts. As I spoke, I spooned half of the rice from my own bowl into the soup tureen, mixed it, and began to eat heartily. This is delicious, Mr. Blackwood. You should have some more." Don't be shy. This fluid sequence of actions, combined with my satisfied foodie expression, left Ethan completely stunned. His carefully prepared concern, backed by his medical knowledge, was neutralized by my more down-to-earth, practical, and irrefutable demonstration of care. He could say I didn't understand finance or art, but he couldn't say I didn't understand Victoria. Because every word I said, every move I made conveyed one single message: I know her better than you do. Victoria kept her head down, eating small spoonfuls from her bowl, but the slight upward curve of her lips and the pink blush on her ears betrayed her true feelings. This round, I won again. The meal concluded in this undercurrent of tension, masked by surface-level harmony. When it was time to pay, Ethan, as expected, stood up and took out his wallet. "Let me get this. A little welcome-back celebration for myself." This was his final and most direct way of showing off using money to display his success and generosity. Of course, I wasn't going to fight him for it. I just sat in my seat, leisurely sipping my tea, and watched him walk to the front desk. Then, I saw the waitress give him a polite smile and say, "Sir, the lady has already paid the bill." The waitress was pointing to Victoria, who had excused herself to go to the restroom but had actually gone to secretly pay. Ethan froze, wallet in hand, his expression priceless. It was probably the first time a woman had ever insisted on paying in front of him, and it was in front of his old flame, at the very moment he was trying to flex his financial muscle. Victoria walked over, looped her arm through mine, and smiled at Ethan. "We said it was to welcome you back. How could we let you pay?" "Next time, you can definitely treat us next time." That next time was polite, but distant. On the way back, Ethan sat in the back seat, silent for the entire ride. The atmosphere in the car was a bit heavy. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. This golden boy was leaning against the window, watching the city lights streak by, the lines of his profile looking somewhat desolate. And my wife, sitting in the passenger seat next to me, was secretly reaching her hand over to intertwine her fingers with mine. I could feel the warmth of her palm, as warm and steady as my own. Chapter 4. After dropping Ethan off, Victoria and I went home, both of us tacitly agreeing not to mention him again. Life went on as usual. I researched my recipes and she worked on her projects, until a few days later when one of Victoria's best friends, Vivian Miller, the gossip columnist of our social circle, gave me a call. The moment I answered, Vivian's boisterous voice came through the phone. "Sincere, are you serious?" Ethan Blackwood is back, and you're acting like nothing's happened? I put the phone on speaker, setting it aside as I continued to process a sea bass I had just bought, scaling it, gutting it. What else am I supposed to do? I asked, amused. Challenge him to a duel? Or go home and throw a tantrum for Victoria? Vivian was at a loss for words. I'm worried about you. Do you know what everyone's saying? They're all saying Ethan came back to win Victoria back, and they're saying you were just a placeholder. A placeholder? I raised an eyebrow. That's a new one. I must be a pretty durable placeholder. It's been 3 years. Sincere Vivian's voice shot up an octave. Don't you have any sense of crisis? This is Ethan Blackwood back in the day Victoria was so what about him? I interrupted her. The knife in my hand came down with a thud, chopping off the fish's head. The sound wasn't loud, but it was clear enough. Vivian, let the past be the past. Victoria is my wife now, and I'm her husband. That's all that matters. The other end of the line went quiet. I could picture Vivian stunned into silence by my retort. I sighed, softening my tone a bit. I know you mean well, but you need to trust Victoria, and you need to trust the relationship we have. We're not made of paper. A little wind won't blow us apart. But, no buts. I placed the cleaned fish on a plate and marinated it with ginger and scallions. If you really care about us, stop spreading these rumors. With that time, you might as well think about what you want to eat the next time you come over. I want your sweet and sour pork ribs. Vivian's voice deflated. Got it. I'm hanging up now. I'm busy. I hung up decisively. When I turned around, I saw Victoria leaning against the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching me with an amused expression. She'd been there for who knows how long. Quite the tough guy, Mr. Clark, she teased, raising an eyebrow. Daring to shut down my best friend. I wiped my hands and walked over, hugging her from behind and resting my chin on her shoulder. Of course, she was bad-mouthing me and trying to undermine my morale, I murmured, nuzzling her neck. She needed to know who's boss in this house. The nuzzling tickled her, and she giggled. Yes, you're the boss, our great hero. She turned around, cupped my face in her hands, and looked me seriously in the eyes. Thank you for that. For what? Thank you for trusting me so much. Looking at the light in her eyes, my heart melted. I leaned down and kissed her forehead. Silly girl. Who would I trust if not you? Just as we were having our moment, my phone rang at a most inopportune time. I picked it up and saw the caller ID, mother-in-law. Victoria and I exchanged a look. We both saw a flicker of trouble in each other's eyes. Sure enough, as soon as I answered, my mother-in-law's anxious voice came through. Sincere, are you and Vicky free right now? Come home. Quickly, something terrible has happened. My heart skipped a beat. For my usually calm mother-in-law to say something terrible has happened, it couldn't be a small matter. Victoria and I didn't dare delay, immediately driving over to her parents' house. As we walked in, we saw my father-in-law and mother-in-law sitting stiffly on the sofa, their expressions grim. On the coffee table was a hospital appointment slip. Dad, Mom, what's wrong? Is someone sick? Victoria asked anxiously. My mother-in-law didn't speak, just pointed at the appointment slip and then looked at me with an incredibly complex expression. Sincere, my mother-in-law took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. Mom knows that asking you to do this checkup might be unfair to you, but for Vicky's happiness and for our family, you have to do it. I picked up the appointment slip and froze. Written in bold letters were, Urology Department, Comprehensive Fertility Evaluation. Me. Victoria, Mom, what are you doing? My father-in-law tapped his pipe on the table and said gravely, Vicky, don't get excited. Your mother felt she had no choice. That Blackwood kid is back, and there are all sorts of rumors flying around. It's hard for us to hear. You and Sincere have been married for 3 years, and there's been no news. We started to wonder if there was some kind of physical problem. My mother-in-law added, exactly, if you two were fine and could have a child, then no matter what anyone says, our minds would be at ease, no matter how outstanding Ethan is. He can't steal a mother away from her child, can he? I finally understood. The two of them had been spooked by Ethan's return and, in their desperation, decided to deploy the ultimate weapon, a child to completely extinguish any of his lingering hopes. And I had become the poor soul suspected of being incapable. Victoria's face turned pale with anger. Dad, Mom, how could you think that about Sincere? This has nothing to do with him. We haven't had a child because we decided together that we wanted a few more years of just the two of us. That's just an excuse. My mother-in-law slapped her thigh. Vicky, don't protect him. Men can be embarrassed about these things. Sincere, be honest with Mom. Is it really? I looked at my mother-in-law's cautious yet hopeful eyes, then at my father-in-law's "this is for your own good" expression, and finally at Victoria, who looked like she was about to explode. I suddenly found it a little funny. I cleared my throat, pulled Victoria behind me protectively, and then gave my in-laws a perfectly obedient smile. Dad, Mom, I understand your concerns. I picked up the appointment slip and placed it ceremoniously in my pocket. I'll do the checkup. Sincere Victoria stomped her foot behind me in frustration. I gave her a look that said, calm down, and continued speaking to her parents. But I have one condition. My father-in-law and mother-in-law exchanged a glance. Go on. Until the results are out, you are not to give Victoria a hard time about Ethan Blackwood, and you are not to let your imaginations run wild. Just wait peacefully for my results, okay? My tone was calm and sincere, carrying a force that was hard to refuse. The two of them hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. Okay, we promise. Then it settled. I smiled and took Victoria's hand. Mom, Dad, if there's nothing else, we'll head back. By the way, remember to have some soup tonight. I dropped off some freshly stewed black chicken soup this afternoon. It's good for your sleep. With that, I led a still pouting Victoria out the door. The moment we got in the car, Victoria pulled her hand away. Sincere, you crazy? How could you agree to their ridiculous request? It's an insult to you. Looking at her puffed up cheeks, I couldn't resist reaching out and pinching her face. Don't be angry. You're not as pretty when you're angry. You're still smiling. Victoria slapped my hand away. Do you have any idea how out of line they were? I know. I dropped the smile and looked at her seriously. I know they were out of line, and I know you're hurting for me. But Vicky, have you ever thought about why they're doing this? Victoria froze. Because they're scared, I said, starting the car and slowly driving out of the residential complex. They're scared of losing you, scared that the happiness you have now is just a fleeting moment. Ethan's appearance magnified that fear. They don't distrust you, and they don't distrust me. They just love you too much. That's why they're using this clumsy, direct, and even hurtful way to find an answer that will put their minds at ease. I'm doing this checkup not because I have anything to hide, nor to prove anything to them. I just want to show them, through my actions, that their son-in-law is physically healthy, mentally even healthier, and has more than enough ability to give their daughter a lifetime of happiness. I want to let them finally, truly, relax. The car was quiet, save for the soft hum of the engine. Victoria watched me silently, her eyes slowly turning red. Sincere, she sniffled. Did I save the galaxy in a past life to deserve marrying you? I freed one hand and ruffled her hair. No, I must have saved the entire universe in a past life to be able to marry you. I looked at the endless stream of traffic ahead, a faint smile playing on my lips. Ethan, you might think your opponent is me, but you're wrong. Your opponent is us, this family tightly bound by love and trust. And you can't even find the door. Chapter 5. I went for the checkup alone. I didn't let Victoria come with me. For something like this, a grown man didn't need to make a big fuss. The hospital was bustling with people, filled with the smell of disinfectant. Holding the appointment slip, I easily found the urology clinic. The doctor was a middle-aged man with a receding hairline, and he had a kind demeanor. He looked at my slip, pushed up his glasses, and gave me a once-over. You look pretty healthy, young man. What brings you in for this test? Trouble conceiving? I smiled and gave a half-truth. Not really. My in-laws are just eager for grandchildren and insisted I get checked out for peace of mind. The doctor nodded knowingly. That's how the older generation is. Understandable. What followed was a series of procedures, blood draws, tests, and so on. The process was unremarkable, even a bit boring. While waiting for the results, I sat on a bench in the hallway, scrolling through my phone. Victoria sent me a message. How's it going? Nervous? I replied. So nervous I just ate 2 extra pork buns. She sent back a series of ellipses, followed by a crying, laughing emoji. Tell me the results as soon as you get them. Yes, my queen. Putting my phone down, I idly observed the people around me. There were young men who had come alone like me, their faces a mixture of confusion and anxiety. There were also couples, the wife softly comforting her husband, who sat with his head down, silent. Life, I thought, really comes in all flavors. Just as my mind was wandering, a familiar figure flashed past me. I took a closer look and froze. Ethan Blackwood? What was he doing here? He was walking quickly, wearing a mask and a hat that covered most of his face, and he went straight into another clinic room. The sign on that door read neurology. A flicker of curiosity sparked within me. What was he doing at a neurologist's office? Could it be he wasn't adjusting well to being back and had insomnia? The thought came and went, and I quickly pushed it to the back of my mind. I had no interest in prying into other people's private affairs. An hour later, I had my lab report. I didn't look at it closely, just stuffed it in my pocket and drove back to my in-laws' house. The two of them were clearly waiting anxiously. The moment I walked in, they rushed over, their eyes filled with a mix of nervousness and hope. Well, Sincere, the results. What are the results? My mother-in-law's voice was trembling slightly. I didn't say a word, just pulled the report out of my pocket and handed it to them. My father-in-law put on his reading glasses and took it with shaky hands. My mother-in-law leaned in close, their two heads huddled together, studying the technical terms and data on the pages, word by word. This, motility, 100. What does that mean? And this, normal morphology rate, 98. Is that high? Doctor's summary. All indicators far exceed normal standards can be considered. Specimen grade. The air seemed to freeze in that moment. My father-in-law slowly looked up, took off his glasses, and stared at me as if I were an alien. My mother-in-law's reaction was even more dramatic. Her mouth fell open, and the report in her hand slipped to the floor with a soft thud. She looked at the report, then back at me, the emotion in her eyes shifting from shock to realization and then to an indescribable mix of ecstasy and pride. Oh, my heavens. My mother-in-law clutched her chest, too emotional to speak clearly. Sincere, you're in incredible shape. My father-in-law, equally astounded, cleared his throat, trying to maintain his patriarchal dignity, but the grin stretching from ear to ear was impossible to hide. Ahem. Not bad at all. He is the son-in-law I chose, after all. Me, Dad, I don't think that was your attitude toward me in the beginning, was it? Victoria, standing beside me, looked completely bemused. She probably never expected that a simple medical report could have such a profound impact on her parents. Well, that settled it. The huge weight on their minds hadn't just been lifted, it had been utterly obliterated. My mother-in-law snapped back to reality, rushed forward, and grabbed my hands. Her enthusiasm was 100 times greater than when Victoria had first brought me home. My dear son-in-law, you're truly my dear son-in-law. Mom was wrong about you. I apologize as she spoke. She patted my arm with her other hand, her eyes shining with that. The more I look at my son-in-law, the more I like him glow. I knew it. How could our Vicky's judgment be wrong? Just look at you, so strong and healthy. You look like a man destined for great things. I was a bit embarrassed by her praise and could only manage a dry laugh. Mom, you're exaggerating. Not at all, not one bit. My mother-in-law waved her hand grandly. From this day on, I'm taking over all the cooking. You don't have to do a thing. Just rest up and take care of yourself, conserve your energy, and let's aim for me to be holding a grandchild by next year. Me. This was not how I expected things to go. I just wanted to put their minds at ease, not launch them into Operation Grandbaby mode. That evening, I received treatment worthy of an emperor. Dinner was a 10 tonic soup personally prepared by my mother-in-law. Dessert was imported kiwis, hand-cut by my father-in-law. When we left, my mother-in-law stuffed the trunk of my car with all sorts of supplements she'd had people buy for her cordyceps, wild sea cucumbers, so much that I suspected she had emptied out an entire herbal medicine shop. Staring at the mountain of love in my trunk, Victoria and I looked at each other, a shared sense of helpless amusement in our eyes. Congratulations, Mr. Clark, Victoria said, leaning against the car door and giving me a teasing look. You've been promoted to our family's most prized possession. I sighed and started the car with a look of utter resignation. I have a feeling, I said, that my days ahead are not going to be easy. I could already foresee a future dominated by the terror of various nourishing soups and my mother-in-law's expectant gazes. But then, looking at Victoria beside me, laughing so hard she was shaking, I thought that maybe, just maybe, it was all worth it. Chapter 6. Ever since that specimen-grade medical report, my status in my in-laws' home underwent a seismic shift. Before, they looked at me with an expression that said, "Well, this young man seems to treat our daughter well." Now they look at me as if to say, "My goodness, this is our family's walking, talking treasure." The most direct evidence of this was my mother-in-law completely taking over our kitchen. Every day, she would cook up a storm of different dishes for me, under the guise of nutritional supplementation. It got to the point where I, who had once prided myself on being a stay-at-home husband, was effectively unemployed. My biggest task each day was figuring out how to finish all the loving meals my mother-in-law sent over. Victoria was more than happy about this. More than once she patted my increasingly round belly and joked, "Mr. Clark, if this keeps up, you're going to go from specimen grade to standard bearer, with standard referring to your weight being over the standard limit." I could only protest in vain. As for Ethan Blackwood, my in-laws never mentioned his name again. It was as if he had never existed. On the rare occasion when a clueless relative brought him up at a family gathering saying Ethan had started his own investment firm and was a real go-getter, and suggesting he and Victoria collaborate on a project, my mother-in-law wouldn't even bat an eye. She would just leisurely place a piece of food in my bowl. "A collaboration won't be necessary. Our Vicky is very busy. Besides, we have more important things to focus on right now." The relative would ask curiously, "What's that?" My mother-in-law would glance at me and smile mysteriously. "That's a top family secret. I can't say. The relative, rebuffed, would fall silent, and I would silently take another bite of rice amidst the knowing smiles of the entire family. This feeling of being treated as the secret weapon was quite peculiar. Just when I thought life would continue on in this warm and comical rhythm, Ethan made another move. This time, he didn't resort to sending gifts or engineering chance encounters. He came directly for my area of expertise. One day, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, may I speak with Mr. Sincere Clark?" The voice on the other end was very polite. "This is he. Who's calling?" "I'm the executive assistant to the chairman of Stellar Capital. My name is Wallace. We are currently planning a very high-end business gala and are hoping to invite a top private chef to design and execute the entire menu. We've heard that Mr. Clark has a reputation in the culinary world as a hermit chef god, so we wanted to ask if you would be interested in taking on this event." "Stellar Capital?" I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't that the company Ethan founded after returning?" So, after all this, he was trying to put me in my place by challenging me in the one area where I am most skilled and take the most pride. This Mr. Wallace certainly had a way with words. Hermit chef god? I'd never even heard that title myself. It seemed they had done their homework on me. They knew that while I wasn't affiliated with any restaurant, my culinary skills were recognized as top tier within a small, exclusive circle. Ethan's plan was meticulous. If I refused, he could spread the word that the so-called chef god was all talk, unable to handle a single high-end banquet, a man with a fraudulent reputation. That would undoubtedly be a blow to my confidence. If I accepted, he would be my client, my boss. He could make all sorts of demanding, even unreasonable requests at any point during the banquet. He could criticize my food and find fault with my service in front of all the guests. When that happened, I, the chef god, would be thoroughly humiliated on the stage he had so carefully set, and Victoria would have a front-row seat to witness just how pathetic her supposedly proud husband could be in front of others. A truly devastating psychological blow. I could almost picture Ethan on the other end of the line, with that look of a master strategist who was confident of his victory. Unfortunately for him, he had miscalculated one more thing. I, Sincere Clark, take the greatest pleasure in tearing other people's carefully written scripts to shreds. I let out a soft chuckle into the phone. "Mr. Wallace, is it? First, thank you for your company's high regard. However, the title, Hermit Chef God, is a bit of an exaggeration. I'm just an ordinary person who enjoys cooking." I paused, then changed my tone. "But I am somewhat interested in this banquet. However, when I take a job, I have my own rules. Please tell us, we're all ears," Mr. Wallace replied, his tone still respectful. "First, I decide the menu. The client can have no objections. I will create the most suitable menu based on the theme of the event and the dietary restrictions of the guests. Second, I have full control of the kitchen, from sourcing ingredients to managing staff. The client cannot interfere. Third, and most importantly, I added, my voice firm, my fee is very high. There was silence on the other end. I slowly stated a number. It was a figure that would make the executive chef of any five-star hotel gasp. Mr. Wallace was clearly shocked by the number. He audibly drew in a sharp breath. Mr. Clark, that fee, too expensive. I laughed. Mr. Wallace, you should know that a craftsman, especially a top-tier one, cannot be measured in money. I'm quoting this price not because my work is worth this much, but because my time is worth this much. Of course, you can always refuse. After all, there are thousands of chefs in this city. You don't need me. With that, I prepared to hang up. I knew Ethan would agree. He had set this trap not to save money, but to humiliate me. If he gave up this opportunity because of the cost, his entire purpose would be defeated. He was in a bind. Sure enough, just as my finger was about to press the end call button, Mr. Wallace's urgent voice came through. Wait, Mr. Clark, don't hang up. I need to consult with our chairman. Fine, I gave him an out. I'll give you 10 minutes. If I don't hear from you in 10 minutes, this collaboration is off. I hung up, tossed the phone aside, and went back to tending my succulents. Victoria came out of the study and poured me a glass of water. Ethan's company? She asked, having obviously overheard my conversation. I nodded. It seems Mr. Blackwood hasn't given up yet. Then why did you agree? Victoria's brow furrowed, her eyes filled with unconcealed worry. He's definitely up to no good. I know. I pulled her down to sit on the sofa and wrapped my arm around her. Don't worry. When have you ever seen your husband get the short end of the stick? I pinched her nose playfully. He wants to defeat me on my home turf. We'll see if he has what it takes. Besides, I'm kind of looking forward to showing him just how unimpressive his precious capital and status are in my eyes. My phone rang at the 8-minute mark, right on schedule. It was Mr. Wallace again. Mr. Clark, our chairman, has agreed to all of your conditions. His voice was laced with a pained reluctance. Excellent. I stood up and walked to the balcony, looking out at the bustling city below. My voice was calm and confident. A pleasure doing business with you. After hanging up, I turned to see Victoria standing in the middle of the living room, watching me. Her eyes were sparkling, as if filled with starlight. Honey, she said, giving me a thumbs up. You are so cool. I smiled. Being called cool by your own wife? That felt better than earning any amount of money. Ethan Blackwood, I accept your challenge. I just wonder, when the night of the banquet arrives, who will be the one who truly loses face? Chapter 7. The Stellar Capital Business Gala was held in the top-floor ballroom of a 5-star hotel. Ethan had spared no expense, booking out nearly the entire floor. On the day of the event, I arrived with my team 5 hours early to take over the kitchen. My team wasn't made up of strangers. They were friends I'd made over the years who shared my passion for food. There was a master of Chinese pastry who lived a secluded life in the old city alleys, a dessert chef who had graduated from Le Cordon Bleu in Paris, and a procurement specialist who was pathologically picky about ingredients. Individually, we might have looked like a bunch of idle loafers, but once we were together in a kitchen, we were an invincible army. The hotel's executive chef initially tried to boss us around, but one either shut up or get out glare from me sent him scurrying away. This was my kitchen. Here, I was the one and only king. Mr. Wallace, representing the client, was present the entire time. He tried several times to get a peek at our menu and prep work, but my procurement specialist, a 6'3" giant with a full beard, politely blocked him with his body. Sorry, Mr. Wallace. Mr. Clark doesn't like to be disturbed while he's working, the giant said, his voice a low rumble, but his face wore a friendly smile. Rebuffed, Mr. Wallace could only retreat to the side, pulling out his phone to text someone. I couldn't be bothered with him. My entire focus was on the top-tier ingredients before me. Wagyu from Australia, blue lobster from France, white truffles from Italy, and wild mushrooms flown in from Yunnan, still glistening with morning dew. These were all sourced by my procurement specialist, who had called in every favor he had to gather them from around the globe. Ethan wanted to crush me with money? Then I would show him what true refinement that money can't buy looks like. The banquet began promptly at 7. The guests began to arrive, a dazzling array of the rich and powerful, the who's who of the city's business world. Through a crack in the kitchen door, I saw Victoria. She was wearing a long black gown tonight, her hair swept up, revealing her elegant neck and beautiful shoulders. She wore no extravagant jewelry, just a pair of small pearl earrings, yet she seemed to glow, a radiant presence in the crowd. She was surrounded by several business partners, handling the conversation with grace. Ethan, as the host, was naturally the center of attention. He moved through the guests with a wine glass in hand, charming and charismatic, the very picture of a successful man. He would occasionally glance in Victoria's direction, the look of a conqueror in his eyes unconcealed. He also shot a look toward the kitchen, a cold smirk on his lips. He probably thought his plan was proceeding perfectly. He would soon discover just how wrong he was. The first course was the appetizer. I didn't choose any of the flashy, elaborate options from traditional Western cuisine. I served a dish called boiling water cabbage. When the waiters placed the small tureens of crystal clear water, like broth, on the tables, a hush fell over the ballroom. Many of the guests had puzzled looks on their faces. This was the dish from the legendary, exorbitantly priced Hermit Chef God? A bowl of boiled water with a piece of cabbage? A self-satisfied smile spread across Ethan's face. He was just about to say something to guide public opinion. But at that moment, an elderly, white-haired gentleman at main table suddenly spoke up. What a magnificent, boiling water cabbage. The broth is as clear as water, without a speck of oil. Yet the aroma is rich and intoxicating. The skill required to create a consommé like this takes decades of practice. It's absolutely masterful. This gentleman was Lawrence Preston, a titan of the city's culinary scene and the head of a century-old culinary brand. His word carried immense weight. Everyone fell silent and picked up their spoons, cautiously taking a sip. In the next second, a wave of suppressed gasps and murmurs of amazement rippled through the hall. Is this really broth? It's unbelievably flavorful. How was this cabbage cooked? It melts in your mouth, and there's a subtle sweetness. Ethan's smile froze on his face. He probably never imagined that among his guests was a true connoisseur who could turn the tide with a single sentence. Mr. Preston put down his spoon, his eyes shining as he looked toward the kitchen. He raised his voice and asked, "I wonder which master chef is presiding over the kitchen tonight. Might we have the honor of meeting him?" Mr. Wallace's face turned pale. He quickly went to Ethan's side and whispered something. Ethan's expression darkened. I didn't go out. Through my headset, I issued the next command to my team. Serve the main course. The second course was a fusion dish, black truffle Wagyu beef cubes, top-grade Australian M12 Wagyu, cut into perfect cubes, seared at high heat to instantly lock in the juices, and then topped with freshly shaved Alba white truffles from Italy. When the silver cloches were lifted, an intoxicating aroma instantly filled the entire ballroom. The scent, a mixture of seared fat and the exotic fragrance of truffle, made everyone swallow hard. My God, is that Alba white truffle? The yield was extremely low this year. You can't get it even if you have the money, a young man who looked like a wealthy heir exclaimed. And the cook on this Wagyu is perfect. A second more, and it would be overdone. A second less, and it would be raw. The guest's praise was like a series of loud slaps across Ethan's face. His meticulously planned trap had now completely transformed into my personal culinary showcase. He had become the fool who paid an astronomical price for me to educate all of his most important business partners. I could imagine his mood right now was probably darker than the black pepper sauce on the plate. And me? I was in the back kitchen, leisurely enjoying a bowl of freshly made noodles in broth. I'd had my pastry master make it specially for me. Delicious. The best way to defeat someone isn't to outtalk them, but to utterly crush them in the field they pride themselves on most, using methods they can't even comprehend. Ethan thought he could control everything with his money and status, but he didn't know that there are some things in this world that money can't buy. Things like true passion and the craftsmanship honed over a decade of dedication. Chapter 8. The banquet continued. Course after course, like unfolding painted scrolls, was perfectly presented under my direction. There was a fake egg made with molecular gastronomy techniques, filled with a mango-flavored yolk. There was lobster, cooked using the sous vide method, its meat tender and succulent, retaining its original sweetness. And for the grand finale dessert, I created a piece named Mirage. It was a hollow sphere spun from sugar, thin as a cicada's wing, filled with dry ice and osmanthus-flavored ice cream. When the waiters gently tapped it open with a small hammer, a white mist billowed out. carrying the fragrance of osmanthus, creating a dreamlike vision. The entire ballroom erupted. Everyone stood up, applauding this final dish, which was nothing short of a work of art. Camera flashes went off non-stop as people took out their phones to capture the stunning moment. Mr. Preston was so excited his face was flushed. He grabbed Ethan's hand and said loudly, "CEO Blackwood, CEO Blackwood, you've truly brought a god-tier master to us, to the entire culinary world of this city. This Mr. Clark is a grandmaster. How much did you pay to get him here?" Whatever it was worth it. Absolutely worth it. Ethan's expression could no longer be described as just unpleasant. It was a chaotic mix of shock, rage, humiliation, and deep, profound defeat. He probably never dreamed that the humiliation he had planned would turn into my coronation ceremony. He watched as the guests he had invited to witness his power and connections all turned into my fans, all of them trying to get my contact information to book a private dinner. He watched Victoria, the woman he yearned for, standing in the crowd with a proud and radiant smile, a smile brighter than the crystal chandeliers in the ballroom. He finally understood. He had lost, utterly and completely. After the banquet, the guests departed, still buzzing with excitement. I had my team pack up and leave first, while I stayed behind to do a final check. Changing out of my chef's whites, I walked out of the kitchen. The ballroom was empty except for Ethan. He was sitting at the head table in the dark. Beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows lay the glittering skyline of the city. His silhouette, in the darkness, looked desolate. He didn't turn around when he heard my footsteps. "You knew all along, didn't you?" His voice was hoarse. "Knew what?" I walked over to the table opposite him and poured myself a glass of water. "My plan. You were playing me the whole time." "I wouldn't call it playing," I said, taking a sip of water to soothe a throat sore from a night of giving orders. "I was just doing my job. You were the one who was overthinking things." He suddenly spun around, his eyes bloodshot, and stared at me. "Who are you? You're not as simple as you appear. How could a stay-at-home husband have these skills, these connections?" "I'm just an ordinary person who likes to cook," I replied, looking at him seriously. "I just happen to be a little more dedicated than others." "I don't believe you," he snarled, like a cornered beast. "You must be pretending to be something you're not. You must have had some other motive for getting close to Victoria." Looking at him in this state, I suddenly felt a pang of pity. "Ethan," I said, putting down my glass, my voice calm, "you're wrong. You've been wrong from the very beginning. You always assumed Victoria chose me because I have some hidden powerful background, or because I use some underhanded tactics. But you never considered the possibility that she chose me simply because I'm me. She doesn't need a man to bring her wealth and status, because she has those things herself. What she needs is a man who can give her warmth, companionship, a man who will cook her a bowl of hot noodle soup on a rainy night, a man who can see past her tough exterior and understand all her vulnerabilities. And I just happen to be that man. It's that simple." My words were like an awl piercing straight through his heart. He stared at me, stunned, his lips moving but no words coming out. He was right. Ethan had treated love like a high-stakes business negotiation, calculating gains and losses, weighing pros and cons. He had forgotten the most essential parts of love, the feeling, the companionship, the small, warm, everyday moments that can't be measured by money or status. "You and Victoria are in the past," I said, standing up to leave. "You can't live in the past forever. It's better for you, and for her, if you move on." I walked to the door. Just as my hand touched the handle, the door opened from the other side. It was Victoria. She had clearly been worried about me and had been waiting outside. Seeing the tense atmosphere in the room, she immediately came to my side and took my arm. She didn't look at Ethan. She just said to me, "Let's go home." "Okay," I nodded. We turned and walked out together, shoulder to shoulder. Victoria Ethan suddenly called out from behind us. We stopped but didn't turn back. Do you love him?" he asked, his voice tinged with a final shred of desperation. Victoria was silent for a moment. Then she turned her head, looked at Ethan, and said, her voice serious and clear, "Ethan, meeting him was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me." With that, she didn't linger. She took my hand, and we walked out of the ballroom, into the brilliant night. I knew from that moment on, the name Ethan Blackwood would be permanently erased from our lives, a chapter finally closed, and my story with Victoria was just beginning. Chapter 9. Ethan's trap of a banquet became a widely circulated joke in the city's elite circles. The butt of the joke, of course, wasn't me, the hermit chef god, but the CEO of Stellar Capital, who had lost both his money and his pride. Rumor had it that his gala, far from launching his new company, had backfired spectacularly. The food was so amazing that all the guests forgot the purpose of the event and spent the entire night discussing how delicious the dishes were and who the chef was. What's more, several investors who had been planning to partner with Ethan ended up contacting me through various channels after the banquet, hoping to book a private dinner. Their reasoning was, anyone who can spend money on something as ephemeral as food and do it with such taste must be a friend worth making. Me? What kind of bizarre logic was that? However, I didn't accept any of those invitations. I passed their contact information to my procurement specialist, the bearded giant, and let him handle it. He now moonlights as my agent, telling everyone, Mr. Clark's schedule is full. Bookings are now being taken for the end of next year, keeping those tycoons on the hook. And I returned to my life as a stay-at-home husband. Except my life had undergone a small change. My father-in-law, Arthur Donovan, had become my #1 fan. Ever since the banquet, the way he looked at me had shifted from appreciation to adoration. Now he boasted to everyone he met, "My son-in-law, you have no idea, he's a hidden master. His skills, I tell you, are on par with a state banquet." He even gave me his prized Zisha teapot, which he had treasured for years, calling it a fine sword for a true hero. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I just cook. How did I become a hero? Today was my father-in-law's 60th birthday. Victoria had been planning it for half a month, suggesting we book a large private room at a hotel to celebrate in style. But my father-in-law rejected the idea outright. Why go to a hotel? Is hotel food better than what our Sincere can make? Arthur waved his hand, appointing me as the imperial chef. We'll celebrate at home, let Sincere show off his skills and open the eyes of those old geezers. Right, me again. But I was happy to cook for my own family. On the day of the birthday feast, the house was buzzing with activity. Victoria's aunts and uncles, Arthur's old army buddies and colleagues, everyone was there, packing the large living room. I had been busy in the kitchen since early morning. My mother-in-law, Helen, tried to help, but I escorted her out. "Mom, your job today is to entertain the guests. I can handle this little matter in the kitchen by myself." This was my kitchen, my battlefield. No unauthorized personnel allowed. Victoria wanted to help, but I pinned her against the doorframe, gave her a kiss, and handed her a plate of freshly cut fruit. "My dear wife, your mission is to look beautiful and help me entertain our guests." She blushed, gave me a playful glare, and took the fruit platter out. In the kitchen, I methodically prepared the day's birthday menu. 16 courses in total: cold appetizers, hot dishes, soups, staples, and desserts. I had designed each one with care, not only to be delicious but also to carry auspicious meanings. For example, a dish called Pine and Crane Longevity was made with winter melon carved into the shape of a crane, served with a rich mushroom consommé. Another dish, a hall filled with gold and jade, was a colorful stir-fry of corn, peas, carrots, and shrimp, symbolizing prosperity. Just as I was in the heat of cooking, the kitchen door was suddenly pushed open. An unexpected person appeared in the doorway. Ethan Blackwood. What was he doing here? He was dressed in a smart casual suit, his hair perfectly styled, and he was carrying a gift box that looked incredibly expensive. His expression was calm. He saw me and gave a slight nod, a silent greeting. Behind him was a distant relative, looking extremely awkward. Sincere, this is Vicky's cousin's son's friend, CEO Blackwood. He insisted on coming to pay his respects to the old man for his birthday. I couldn't stop him. I understood. Some clueless relative, wanting to show off their connection to Victoria's family in front of Ethan, had brought him here on their own initiative. I wiped my hands and walked out of the kitchen. In the living room, all eyes were on the uninvited guest. The atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. My father-in-law's face fell instantly. My mother-in-law's smile froze on her face. Only Victoria remained composed. She stood up, walked over to her father, and patted his shoulder reassuringly. Then she said to the relative, "Aunt Carol, since he's a guest, please have him take a seat." Her tone was polite but distant. Ethan didn't seem to mind the awkward atmosphere. He walked up to Arthur and presented the gift box. Mr. Donovan, please forgive my intrusion. I wish you a long and happy life. This is a painting I had someone acquire for me at a Sotheby's auction. Bamboo and Rock by Zheng Banqiao. I hope you like it. A painting by Zheng Banqiao. A collective gasp went through the living room. That was an incredibly generous gift. Arthur was a lover of art. His eyes flickered with interest as he looked at the exquisite box, but he quickly composed his face into a stern expression. I can't accept a gift for which I've done nothing to deserve. CEO Blackwood, I appreciate the thought, but this is too valuable. I cannot accept it. Ethan smiled and didn't press the issue. You're too kind, sir. I've known Victoria for many years. As her father, you are my elder. It's only right for a junior to wish an elder a happy birthday. His words were flawless, elevating himself while also implying a special relationship with Victoria. Just then, I emerged from the kitchen carrying a platter with a giant longevity peach mountain, a towering creation made of steamed buns shaped like peaches. Dinner is served, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone, please take your seats. My voice was loud and cheerful, instantly breaking the strange tension in the room. Everyone's attention was drawn to the uniquely shaped and fragrant peach mountain in my hands. Wow, those longevity peaches are beautiful, it smells amazing. Everyone began to move to the dining table. A small storm had seemingly been averted by me. Ethan was seated at an inconspicuous corner of the table. He seemed unperturbed, but his gaze would often, inadvertently, fall on me and Victoria. I knew he hadn't come here today just to give a gift. He was waiting for an opportunity to make himself the center of attention once again. And I had no intention of giving him that opportunity. Chapter 10. The birthday banquet officially began. The 16 dishes I had prepared were brought to the table in a steady stream. Each dish was met with a small gasp of admiration. This lion's head meatball is so rich but not greasy. It melts in your mouth incredible. This peacock spreading its tail fish is not only beautiful, it's also unbelievably fresh sincere. With skills like these, it's a real waste that you haven't opened your own restaurant. The praise was endless. Arthur sat at the head of the table, his face glowing, a grin stretching from ear to ear. He held his wineglass, basking in the compliments from his old friends, looking as proud as if he had cooked the meal himself. It's nothing, really. This is just a little hobby of my son-in-law's, he said humbly, but the pride in his eyes was impossible to hide. As for me, I moved back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room, ensuring every dish was served in its most perfect state. Victoria was by my side, handing me plates and wiping sweat from my brow like a busy little bee. The unspoken understanding and affection between us were beyond words. Ethan sat in his corner, silently watching it all. He had barely touched the food in front of him. With every compliment directed at me, his expression grew darker. He probably couldn't understand why his million-dollar painting was being overshadowed by a table of seemingly ordinary home-cooked food. He didn't get it. For a family, the most precious things are never the ones that can be measured by money. It's this lively, bustling warmth, the comfort of family gathered together under the lamplight. As the wine flowed and the meal progressed, the atmosphere grew more and more festive. One of Arthur's old army buddies, a little drunk, slapped the table and declared loudly, "Old Donovan, the best investment you ever made in your life wasn't your company. It was finding a son-in-law like this, absolutely, with a son-in-law like him. You can just sit back and enjoy your life. Come on, everyone. Let's toast Sincere to thank him for this amazing feast." Everyone stood up, raised their glasses, and looked at me in unison. I was a bit overwhelmed and quickly raised my teacup. I never drink alcohol. You're all too kind. Seeing everyone eat and drink well is the greatest compliment to me at this peak moment. A discordant voice cut through the air. You can be bought with a single meal? It was Ethan. He stood up, a mocking smile on his face. Mr. Clark's cooking is indeed good. But if all a man can do is hover around a kitchen, what's the difference between him and the help? His words were like a bucket of cold water, instantly extinguishing the festive atmosphere. Everyone fell silent, their eyes fixed on him. The distant relative who had brought him turned pale with fear, tugging at his sleeve from under the table. Arthur's face had turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He slammed his glass down on the table with a loud crack. Victoria also stood up, her gaze cold as she stared at Ethan. "Ethan, watch your words." But Ethan acted as if he hadn't seen or heard any of it. He walked straight up to me, his eyes burning with intensity. Sincere, I admit, I underestimated you. You're very good at charming people, at winning them over with these small favors. But what can Victoria get by being with you? She is a woman who should be on top of the world, not wasting her talent and her life with you in a kitchen. I came back and founded Stellar Capital. Within 3 months, we'll close our series of funding at a valuation of over $1 billion. I can give her the best resources, the biggest platform. I can make her a true queen. And you? What can you give her? A lifetime smelling of cooking fumes? His voice was powerful and full of conviction. When he finished, the living room was deathly silent. All eyes were on me. There was pity, sympathy, and schadenfreude. They were all waiting to see how I, the stay-at-home husband, would respond to this devastating attack from a Wall Street elite. I didn't look at him. I calmly picked up a damp napkin from the table and wiped my hands. Then, I looked up at Victoria, who was standing beside me. "Honey," I asked her, "do you think the smell of cooking fumes is choking?" Victoria looked at me and suddenly smiled, her eyes crinkled, and her smile was like a blooming lily. She shook her head, her voice crisp and firm. "Not at all." She reached out, straightened my slightly messy collar, and said softly, "I think it's the best smell in the world, because it's the smell of home." Then she turned her head to face a pale Ethan. "Ethan, what you said sounds very tempting, but you probably don't know that my own company's net profit last quarter was $1.5 billion. The platform you mentioned, the one that can make me a queen? I'm sorry, but I already have one. And it's bigger and more stable than yours. As for my husband," she turned back to me, her eyes full of love. In front of everyone, she stood on her tiptoes and gently kissed my cheek. "What he gives me is something you, and any other man in this world, could never give. He gave me a home, a place where I can let down all my guards and just be myself." Victoria's words were powerful. Every word was like a bullet, hitting Ethan squarely in the chest. He stood there stunned, his face ashen. His precious capital, his self-righteous rescue mission, it had all been turned into a complete joke by Victoria's calm and composed speech. And it wasn't over. Arthur, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. He stood up, walked over to me, and clapped me firmly on the shoulder. He didn't look at Ethan. Instead, he addressed all the guests, his voice ringing out, "Everyone, today, on my birthday, I have one more announcement to make." He took a document out of his pocket. "This is a contract that our Sincere just signed last week." He unfolded the document, showing it to the people closest to him. "The Michelin Group from France has officially invited our Sincere to be their global culinary advisor and chief tasting officer for the Greater China region. The annual salary is 8 figures, after taxes, in euros. Furthermore, the Michelin Group will establish a culinary foundation in Sincere's name on a global scale, dedicated to discovering and nurturing talented young chefs like him." Arthur's voice wasn't loud, but every word was like a bombshell exploding in the living room. The room was utterly silent. Everyone was staring at me as if I were some kind of monster, including Victoria. Her mouth was slightly open, her face a picture of disbelief. I hadn't had a chance to tell her about this yet. Ethan looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He staggered back a couple of steps, muttering to himself, "No, impossible, this is impossible. Michelin Global Culinary Advisor? Chief Tasting Officer for Greater China?" Each of these titles represented the absolute pinnacle of the culinary profession. In the face of such titles, even a Wall Street financial elite like him seemed dim, not to mention the 8-figure salary in euros. His proud philosophy of success, measured by money, had just been utterly and brutally crushed by me in the most direct way possible. I looked at his devastated figure, feeling no sense of triumph. I just walked up to him and said softly, "Even the help has different ranks." With that, I ignored him, took a still dazed Victoria by the hand, and walked over to her parents. "Dad, Mom, happy birthday!" Our family stood together amidst a sea of shocked, envious, and jealous gazes, smiling brighter than the sun outside. Chapter 11. I don't know when Ethan left. I only know that from that day on he completely vanished from our world. Vivian told me he flew back to the United States the very next day, leaving his stellar capital in the hands of his subordinates. He probably needed some time to process the mystical Eastern power beatdown he had received on his trip back home. As for me, my life became a lot less quiet after my father-in-law's official announcement. My phone was ringing off the hook. All sorts of media outlets, food magazines, and TV stations wanted to interview the newly crowned chef god. My agent, The bearded giant was swamped but couldn't have been happier. And I, amidst all this clamor, made a decision that stunned everyone. I turned down all the interviews and commercial events, including the inauguration ceremony arranged by Michelin. My response to Michelin's headquarters was, "I'll be an advisor, I'll be a tasting officer, but I will only work online. I will not leave my home or my kitchen." And to my surprise, Michelin agreed. They even sent a team to my home in the city to set up a state-of-the-art remote work system for me. And so, I became the first work-from-home global culinary advisor in Michelin's history. Everyone thought I was crazy, to turn my back on such fame and fortune, just to stay in my little kitchen at home. Only Victoria understood me. That night, she was curled up in my arms and asked, "Do you have any regrets? Giving up the chance to stand on the world stage?" I gently tapped her nose and smiled. "What's so great about the world stage? It's not as good as my family stage. For me, the most important stage is this little kitchen in our home. The most important audience member is you. And the most important award is hearing you say, 'That was delicious,' after you finish a meal I've cooked. As long as I have that, it's enough." She didn't say anything, just buried her head deeper into my chest. I knew she understood. We were the same. We weren't chasing the empty halos of the outside world, but the real, steady happiness in our hearts. Money, status, fame, we could earn those things ourselves. But a home, a loved one, and the warmth of a home-cooked meal, those are the truly unique luxuries in this world. Chapter 12. 6 months later, Victoria and I went to the hospital and came back with a new report. An ultrasound scan. On it was a tiny, sprout-like shadow. The doctor said it was 8 weeks along and very healthy. We stood in the hospital hallway holding that thin piece of paper and looked at each other for a long time. Then, at the same time, we both broke into smiles. On the way home, Victoria carefully placed the ultrasound picture in her bag, as if it were a priceless treasure. "Honey," she said suddenly, "who do you think the baby will look more like?" I thought for a moment and said seriously, "I hope they get all their looks from you so they'll be beautiful. As for personality, half you, half me, strong and decisive like you, and loves life like me." "What about cooking skills?" she pressed. "They have to take after me in the kitchen," I said matter-of-factly. "The legacy of our family's imperial chef must be passed down." She giggled at my joke. Outside the car window, the sun was shining, and the world was peaceful. I held the steering wheel, looking at the woman beside me, my beloved wife, who was about to become a mother. My heart was filled with an immense sense of happiness. I suddenly remembered the question Vivian had asked me a long time ago. "Your wife's old flame is back. Don't you care?" Now I could give her a more accurate answer. I don't care. Because when a man truly has his own moon, why would he care about a faint, long, faded glimmer of so-called moonlight in someone else's world? And Victoria is my moon, unique and shining with an immense light. And I am the astronaut who will forever guard that moon. Bonus scene, a year later, at Arthur's birthday party. The location was once again our home. I was once again the head chef. Except this time, there was a tiny figure in the kitchen with me. My son, Noah Clark, nicknamed Noah. He was wearing a miniature chef's uniform I had custom made for him, complete with a tall chef's hat, and he was seriously gnawing on a carrot. Victoria stood nearby, wiping his drool while looking at me helplessly. "Sincere, are you sure you want to start his training now? He hasn't even grown all his teeth yet," I said with great seriousness. Of course, the Clark family's culinary arts must be taught from a young age. As our family was laughing in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. Victoria went to get it. Standing at the door was Vivian. She wasn't alone. Beside her was a man with a nervous expression holding several large bags. Victoria, Chef Sincere." Vivian's expression was a mix of embarrassment and flattery. "Sorry to drop in unannounced. I hope we're not interrupting." "My husband heard it was your father's birthday and he insisted I bring him over to pay his respects." I looked at the man and thought he looked familiar. After a moment, I remembered. He was Vivian's husband, the one who had been spreading the rumor that I was just a placeholder. Before I could say anything, my father-in-law, who had completely transformed into a doting grandfather, walked out of the living room with his hands behind his back. He glanced at Vivian's husband, then at Vivian, and cleared his throat. "Well, since you're here, come on in. But don't bring so many people next time. Our kitchen is small, not enough seats." Then, he added, his voice not loud but clear enough for everyone to hear, "After all, not everyone is worthy of eating a meal personally cooked by my son-in-law." Vivian's husband's face instantly turned beet red. Victoria and I looked at each other, and we both saw the laughter we were trying to suppress in each other's eyes. This proud and protective old man was getting more and more adorable.